Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, today I want to talk about and discuss what I believe to be the most absurd fact about Zoro that not too many people talk about. But before we get into it, I want to let you guys know that this video is sponsored by Big Squid Productions, an indie production company who will be hosting an exclusive premiere screening and panel for their upcoming award-winning feature film Zombie Con at Anime Expo this coming Saturday, July the 6th. So here's what you guys need to know. The Big Squids are con regulars and cosplayers who are passionate about both anime and filmmaking, and the child of their passions is the movie Zombie Con. So what is Zombie Con about? Well, it's cosplayers stuck in a zombie apocalypse of anime proportions. It's a live-action film by anime fans, about anime fans, and for anime fans. If you are intrigued with the idea of cosplayers battling their way through a zombie-infested, crumbling Los Angeles armed with collectible katanas, suited up in cosplay gear, and fighting to overcome anime-level action and plot twists, well, this is the movie for you. Guys, if you're heading out to Anime Expo, don't miss the chance to see this before anybody else can. There's going to be a lot of cool things going on. Free stuff, including original movie props, collectible toys, and some surprises. Plus, the creators and film stars who I can vouch are very cool people will be hosting a Q&A with photographs and autograph opportunities. I mean, for real, how often can you say that you watched a movie and then immediately after get to hang out with the stars? Again guys, this is going down at Anime Expo, Saturday, July the 6th at 9:30 p.m. at the JW Marriott Diamond Ballroom. As always, links to Zombie Con and all relevant information will be in the description below. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend myself. I'm actually moving to Texas 4 days after this, but you know I'm going to watch it when it hits the theaters. But yeah, again guys, I just want to give a huge thanks to the Big Squids for sponsoring this video, and guys, best of luck on your big premiere, and everybody who is able to attend, have fun. But anyway, to the video at hand guys, everybody knows that Zoro is very, very strong. But there is an enormous difference in Zoro's portrayal before and after the time skip, and I think that we should discuss it. So let's start off with before the time skip, guys. It is incredibly hard to truly power scale Zoro before the time skip because of story shenanigans and everything that Oda put in Zoro's way that wasn't necessarily his fault. Now you could probably do this same thing with both Luffy and Sanji, but I think that it is most absurdly true when looking at Zoro. Whenever you look at Zoro's actions and role within a particular arc, there's a pretty good chance that one of three things is going to happen. Number one, Oda will find a way to delay Zoro so that he is late to the action so that some other characters can have a chance to actually do something, because if Zoro were there, he would take care of it. Number two, Zoro loses one or more of his swords. Zoro is a 3-sword style user. He is strongest when he has all 3 of his swords. You take any number of these away, and Zoro is slightly or potentially significantly weaker. And lastly, most brutally, Zoro often obtains a serious injury. I think that before the time skip, Oda just loved to give Zoro some kind of lasting, significant injury so that he could even the playing fields between himself and whoever Zoro's opponent was. And then of course there could be a combination of any of these 3 things in one given arc. But I suppose that the trend summed up basically means that for the vast majority of before the time skip, Zoro was nerfed in almost every single arc. At the very beginning of the story, when Zoro was first debuted, first introduced, he had been starving for a number of days and was half dead. In the second major arc against Buggy, Luffy and Nami had already been captured and put inside of a cage, and Zoro was tasked to rescue them and fought directly against Buggy, who happened to be the perfect counter for his abilities as a swordsman. Not knowing that Buggy could not be slashed, gave Buggy the opportunity to stab Zoro in the back. I think it's really interesting to compare Zoro's fights and Luffy's fights, because whereas Luffy gained some kind of advantage, story advantage over his opponent, like Oda finagled a way for Luffy to be able to defeat his opponents, Oda did the exact opposite with Zoro. Oda tried every way conceivable to make him a little bit weaker than he would be normal. And so after Zoro fought and momentarily defeated Buggy, the Buggy pirates returned. Zoro was then tasked with fighting Kabaji, and what does Kabaji do but repeatedly strike the injury that he had received at the hands of Buggy earlier. In Syrup Village, the arc in which the Strats recruited Usopp, Oda used all 3 of these techniques in order to make Zoro weaker. Zoro was first delayed, then fighting against the Neon Bond brothers, they made him believe that they were cowards and took advantage of this momentary opportunity to steal 2 of Zoro's swords. Zoro then had to fight both of the brothers with only 1 sword, and was fighting them relatively evenly when Usopp tried to attack them with a lead star, which Zoro intercepted, fearing for Usopp's safety. So the lead star hit Zoro, and then gave the brothers the opportunity to what? Injure Zoro. So now with Zoro injured, Oda felt that it was good enough, so Nami retrieved Zoro's swords and he defeated his opponents. And then again at the end of the arc helped Usopp defeat Django. And so in the next arc, the Baratie arc, before all the fighting really went down, Zoro fought against Mihawk and obtained a very, very significant wound that's carried over at least into the next arc and potentially even longer than that. It was suggested that for a normal person, this injury would leave them crippled for 6 months, and that a person would not fully recover from it for 2 years. Now, Zoro is not a normal person, but still. A personal theory that I have that cannot be fully justified, but I still believe it, is if you look at all of Zoro's fights before the time skip, and this is just his fighting style in general, the fights, however long that they were built up for, do not last very long. And I think that this could be partially intentional on Oda's part with the injury that Zoro received at the hands of Mihawk. He stated in the fight against Arlong, when this injury was clearly affecting him, that the battle was taking too long. I think that this injury limited how much Zoro could really exert himself, or for how long he could exert himself, before he would potentially reopen his wound. But it was because of this injury that Zoro could not contribute at all in the fight against Don Krieg. And again, the injury played a very significant role in the Arlong Park arc, where Zoro fought against Hachi, and Hachi essentially attacked his wound over and over again. Zoro then tried to fight Arlong before Luffy could, but it was because of this wound that he did not defeat him. Zoro then for the most part was taken out of the action in Log Town. The Strats arrived in the Grand Line, and with this injury fully healed or not, Zoro soloed the entirety of Baroque Works, while most of the crew was asleep. In Little Garden, Zoro almost entirely cut off his own feet. And it is mostly because of this injury that he suffered in Little Garden that he did not really participate at all in Drum Island. In Alabasta, Zoro was pit against Mr. One, and unfortunately this battle was not fair from the very beginning because Mr. One, Daz Bones, was made out of steel, something Zoro could not cut. So Oda decided that Zoro had to take a beating first before unlocking this ability, and once he did, he defeated Daz Bones in literally one slice. In Skypiea, Zoro got lost, was caught off guard by a Shanyan who shot him, but Zoro shrugged off the gunshot wound and later fought against one of these Sky Priest but using his strongest technique defeated him in one attack. Afterwards, Zoro attempted to fight Enel, but without Haki there was no way that he was going to be able to deal any damage to him, and was shocked unconscious. I think that Eni's Lobby may have been the most fair fight before the time skip that Zoro actually had. He starts off by clashing with Kaku in Water 7, and Kaku quickly sends him flying, and he gets stuck in a building, preventing the fight from going any further. But Zoro suggests later when he's fighting against Kaku again that he has become stronger, so I think similar to Luffy, he unlocked Ashura in this time between Water 7 and Eni's Lobby. And I mean, that makes a lot of sense. You have a lot of time to think when you're stuck in a chimney. So I don't really think that Zoro is defeating Kaku in Water 7, at least not without a very, very long and drawn out battle. Ultimately, getting stuck in the chimney might have saved his life. But having unlocked Ashura in Eni's Lobby, he defeats Kaku. Again here, all that is really required is Zoro using his ultimate technique to defeat his enemy in essentially a moment. But at the end of the arc, a Marine destroys one of his swords, so in the next arc, Thriller Bark, Zoro enters with only 2 swords. Nerfed again. But he fights against the zombie from Wano, Ryuma, and defeats him using a technique that we have not seen before or have seen after, where Zoro sliced Ryuma and set him on fire. But after this, Zoro helps out in the fight against Oars, and at the end of the arc, assumes all of Luffy's damage through Kuma's ability. And essentially from this point to the end of the first half of the story, that Zoro was useless. Crippled in much the same way that he was in the Arlong Park arc after suffering a grievous injury from Mihawk. But yeah, at this point we've gone down all of Zoro's history within the first half of the One Piece story, and the trends are pretty obvious. I mean, how many arcs was Zoro literally taken out of, didn't do anything as a result of injury? And how many arcs did he do something in but was drastically affected by injury? How many battles did Oda sort of prepare Zoro for by first getting him injury, not because of his own fault but some kind of deception? I mean, maybe you can look at Zoro being deceived as inherently his fault, but it's not like he was overpowered, and that's what I'm trying to suggest here. In my mind, when I just think about this, it makes me wonder how much more would Zoro have done? Had he not been delayed, had he always had all 3 of his swords, had he not been injured, how would that have affected the story? And it seems to me it would have been very significant. So much so that maybe our interpretation of how strong Zoro was before the time skip might honestly be changed, if only from a casual perspective. But it's about here that we want to talk about the post-time skip and how things have changed quite significantly. I just asked what it might look like if Zoro had not been nerfed throughout the entirety of the pre-time skip. Well, all you really need to do is, I think, look at the post-time skip to see what the battles would look like. Guys, since the time skip, without all this plot directed against Zoro, he has been absolutely monstrous. In every single fight since the time skip, Zoro has made his opponent look bad, with the possible exception of Basil Hawkins, with that fight being mostly inconclusive and the Strauss trying to run away. I think a lot of people forget, but in Fishman Island, Zoro actually defeated Hody before Luffy could underwater. In Punk Hazard, Zoro glared at Monet and she nearly shite herself, and then proceeded to show that he could cut her in half and defeat her in one blow. He chose not to, but he could have. In Dressrosa, when Pika stopped running within his giant statue, Zoro defeated him again in just one blow. And the general feel of the fight was that Pika never stood a chance to begin with. Guys, how strong is Zoro right now? And how strong will he be when he actually shows us all that he is capable of now? Zoro's absolute strongest technique from before the time skip, he used it twice. He used it in the fight versus Kaku and he used it again against the Pacifista. Ashura, Zoro hasn't even fought somebody who would be worthy of using that technique on. And there is a very real possibility that this technique is even stronger than it was before, improved in some way, or Zoro has developed another, even better, finishing move. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Zoro is just going to one-shot everybody else until the end of the story. He has to come up against a wall, somebody that he cannot defeat, and he needs to grow from it. I'm actually reminded of a line that Zoro said against when he was fighting against Mr. One. If I want to cut you, I have to be able to cut steel. That's too bad I can't cut steel yet, so I can't defeat you. But I feel sorry for you. I've been waiting to be driven into a corner like this so that I could take it up a notch in strength. Guys, this is how Zoro grows as a combatant. And since the time skip, there has been zero growth. Nobody to push Zoro to his limits. Nobody to even push Zoro to go all out, go 100%. And at this point, guys, we have to be close. But we spent all this time analyzing how Zoro's fights work before the time skip and after the time skip, and I finally smell it beginning to change, beginning to go back to the high difficulty fights that made Zoro grow exponentially as he did before the time skip. Constantly push against a wall, an inch from his life, and the kind of thing that has been lacking. Here we are in Wano, and just a few chapters ago, almost the exact same kind of situation that Oda put Zoro through before the time skip happened again in his fight versus Killer. Zoro taking on 2 opponents at the same time without all of his swords, and he suffers what? He suffers an injury. One that looked pretty bad and seems like it will affect him at least somewhat. I mean, even talking about this Killer fight, we're talking about a supernova, somebody who was put on the same pedestal as Zoro, a second in command who was also a supernova, the only person who could really be a rival to Zoro, and he beat him with all of these things planned or placed against him. I mean, before now, or before the time skip, I think that you would have suspected that this would have been one of those fights where Zoro would be allowed to at least partly fight at full strength, but he doesn't need to fight at full strength to beat somebody of Killer's level. So what level of fighter is really going to bring out all of Zoro's strength and allow him to grow? At this point, it just appears as though it's going to be a Calamity, a Yonko commander. Or even if it happens to be Kiroshiro, I consider Kiroshiro to be pretty close to a commander in strength. Either way, this is going down in Wano. The time of Zoro breezing through his opponents has to be over soon. And I think that Oda might be communicating that by returning to what he had done consistently before the time skip. Zoro needs to be in another situation where he is an inch from death, else he will not get stronger. Guys, based on the way that things are going right now, I think that to me, there's a very real possibility that Zoro fights against one of the strongest samurai, somebody like Kiyoshiro, and I think by the time this arc concludes, Zoro might cement himself as the very strongest samurai. Although he's not technically a samurai swordsman from Wano, I think that he will be noted as the strongest and then have earned the blade Shusui that was given to him by Ryuma's body. But fighting against the samurai is really only part of the equation, and I would say a smaller part of the equation. The bigger threat here is Kaido and his calamities. Zoro might honestly be forced to fight both. Both become the strongest swordsmen in Wano, fight against a samurai and a calamity. But even with this potentially being the case, Oda in form, as always, has Zoro injured and without all three of his swords. It seems to me as though Oda is setting up Zoro's next high difficulty fight, already giving him a wound, and currently he does not have his third sword. We don't know when he's going to get it. So let's say that he fights Kiyoshiro and during the Fire Festival before they fight against the Calamities and Kaido. After that fight, he's not going to be 100%. He's not going to be at full strength. Can Oda really allow Zoro to defeat two high difficulty opponents in this same arc? I know that Zoro is strong, stronger than I think that a lot of people believe him to be, a lot of people would give him credit for, but even that might be too much. So I guess all this leads to my point, what it is that I want to speculate. Guys, I think that this will be the arc in which Zoro actually loses. The first legit defeat against an opponent that he is directly fighting since Mihawk. Something that he said would never happen again. And I think that Zoro actually needs this to grow to the next level. I see all these theories about Zoro before Wano even began, and people call it the year of Zoro and how he's going to have the most impressive feats, and that may be the case, but I also think that this is the year of Zoro in the sense of this is when Zoro reaches his rock bottom, similar to how Sanji reached his rock bottom in Whole Cake Island. But I want to ask you guys, who do you think that Zoro fights in Wano? And if you do think that he fights a samurai like Kiyoshiro, and then also a calamity, do you really think that within the time span of a very little time in between, he defeats them both? Because I don't think so. The Straw Hats need to get stronger. That much has been made clear to us. And that doesn't only mean Luffy, that means Zoro as well. Despite his monstrous portrayal since the time skip. Guys, I've said this before and I'm going to say it again here. I have a feeling that this arc, Wano, will provide the greatest test these Straw Hats have ever faced. I mean, those are practically Oda's words himself about the arc before we even got here. But not only is it a monumental test, it will test the resolve that the Straw Hat Pirates have to continue their journey and sail forth for their dreams. If there will ever be a time to quit, I think it will be here in Wano. But yeah guys, I just want to make a video talking about Zoro because his time in Wano is coming soon, and I am so hyped to see it. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.